Modding games is hard in general, but now imagine trying to mod a game that was essentially an indie game, has no modding support, and is almost 10 years old. Yeah. Hey there, I'm Aki, and this is how my team and I are creating the Subnautica Call of the Void mod. Specifically, adding creatures. But first, let me tell you about what we've been up to. This is a devlog after all. People have been worried that we've stopped development on Call of the Void, because there hasn't been a devlog in a while, but don't worry, we are still actively working on it. We've done a lot of backend work, which is really hard to show off, and some of our team members had real life stuff come up, which they had to prioritize for a month, so there has been less progress than in previous months. But we've still made some progress. And if you want more frequent updates, we do weekly progress updates on the Patreon for the engineer tier and above. So, let's get started. I do want to be honest with you and show the entire development process, so let's start with some bad news first. Progress on Void Editor, the program we are working on to allow us to add new terrain to the game, is quite slow. It's incredibly hard to get to work, and from what I've gathered, the programmers have to work with individual bytes, so it is going to take a while. Currently, we're hoping to have it in a state where artists can get to work on creating new biomes at the end of May. But since nobody has done anything like this before for Subnautica, we can't guarantee anything. But now it's time for the good news. We've been making great progress on the Hydra submarine. There's now a pilot UI, like in the Cyclops, and we've revamped the front of the submarine. I won't spoil too much about this part, but I think it looks pretty cool. We are currently implementing its voice lines and the ability for the player to use the interior elevators to get to the upper and lower floors. I also just finished those 2 floors, so the storage room with all your lockers, as well as the integrated bed in the upper room. Let me know what you think in the comments. The main things the Hydra is still missing are most of the unlockable perks, which are fully concepted, we just need time to implement them, and the actual tether in front to indicate where you're currently going. This one actually seems to be a lot harder than we thought, but we're working on it and it'll hopefully be functional soon. You wanna know something fun about developing a mod? You have no clue how the original devs did anything. We have to reverse engineer basically everything. So when it came to the Hydra textures, we ran into some issues. Compare the Hydra textures in our 3D software to in-game. Where did all the detail go? And why is it so dark? And what are these lines? Well, it turns out ambient occlusion is the culprit for the dark part and the lines. It looks a lot better when you turn it off, so we now need to figure out how to fix this for people who do have it on. Fun fact, these lines are actually even in the Cyclops, so I don't know if we'll be able to fix this part. The reflections are a lot more complicated, and it's too technical to get into here, but essentially, we can't figure out how to tell Subnautica how rough something is at the moment. Usually games use a roughness texture, but we cannot figure out how to make Subnautica accept ours. We even talked to the devs and they couldn't really help us since they outsourced most of the model work on Subnautica and then changed how they did it in Below Zero. So we're kind of stuck there at the moment, but I'm sure we'll get over it and find a solution eventually. However, almost all status effects are already implemented and there's just a few that we are still working on. That's right, we're adding status effects. Some are helpful, some are harmful, but they're all very interesting if you ask me. You get them in all kinds of ways. Some creatures may afflict you with bleeding if they bite you, but you can also use some of the new Alterac technology we're adding to get positive effects. This is what they'll look like on your HUD in-game. We are also looking at adding a new tab in your PDA where you can read all about the status effects you've encountered so far. If we figure out how to add a new tab in your PDA, that is. Status effects are going to help or hurt you, but they won't play a major role in Call of the Void. So, while they are going to be common, they are not really going to change the way you have to play massively. But be careful, we might add status effects to parts of the original game as well. Right now, I'm thinking about maybe giving sand sharks a bleeding effect when they bite you, to make them a little more scary than usual. Or maybe something similar for... I forgot that name. Or maybe something similar for bleeders. Like I mentioned, our concept artists had to take some time away from the project due to personal reasons, but they're back now with new concept art. One of those started off with new sketches for a new biome, the pearly brine pools. But who's this little guy? That's how every modded creature starts, with a very rough sketch conveying the basic idea behind it. And because the team loved it, we decided to make an official concept. Meet the long-nosed fish. Name work in progress. Let's follow the development of this little guy from concept to in-game. Just before that though, people have been asking how they can support Call of the Void, and honestly just watching the videos is enough. So thank you very much for actively supporting Call of the Void by watching this. But you can also support us on Patreon and even get one of your creature ideas implemented at the Architect tier. But there's now also a way where you can get something back in real life as well. We've partnered with Gamer Subs now. They basically make a powder which you can turn into a super delicious caffeinated drink. No, I'm not addicted. And if you use the code AKI or the link in the description, you get it for cheaper and the Call of the Void team gets parts of the profit. The more people using that link or using the code, the bigger of a cut we get. So if you want to support the project, you can now also get some Gamer Subs in the process. After we have a final concept, the 3D artists get to work, sculpting the creature in programs like Blender or ZBrush, optimizing it in Blender or Maya, and then painting it in Blender or Substance Painter. This 5-second compilation took about a week in real life, but larger or more complex creatures take a lot longer. The Silence, for example, took almost a month. But once the 3D model is complete, our animators get to work creating all necessary animations. For Subnautica fish, there are quite a few. You need individual animations for each direction the fish can turn in, a swimming animation, the fish being held while alive or while dead, it being hurt, and any of the special behaviors you want the fish to have. And when we're happy with that, we give all of this stuff to our modders. They first turn the model into a so-called game object and give it collision so it doesn't just swim right through your base. After that, they set up the flowchart of animations in the animation controller. Now this is all very complex, but it's basically telling the game to fade between animations if specific conditions are met. So for example, it's supposed to transition from the swimming to the being held animation if it's alive and being held. Or if it's dead and being held, it's supposed to transition to the being held while dead animation. Now usually you'd open the game in Unity from here, but well, Subnautica was basically an indie game like I mentioned, and they do not have any mod support. And since we are not the developers or Unknown Worlds, we can't do that. We have to make all adjustments you'd usually make in Unity in the actual game. So in-game, we adjust its speed, rotation, size, even its materials to make it more or less shiny or lighter or darker until it looks right. And of course, then there's lots and lots of testing, because something always goes wrong. Then we make sure Subnautica knows we're adding a creature by adding it in code. We use programs like Visual Studio or JetBrains Rider to do this, and we also add any of the more complex behaviors here. This, for example, is how we added the feeding behavior to the Ployara grade, which I showed off in the last devlog. At the very end, the sound designers create some noises for the creature, if necessary, like this incredibly cute noise for the sneezing animation. But after that, we are basically done. The modders compile the code into a mod file and it's ready to be installed. Oh, I almost forgot, we of course also create a databank entry, which I usually make the visuals for myself, and we decide on what we want to put in the text together. For the visuals, I first render the creature in Blender, and then take that render into Photoshop and put it on a template, which we thankfully got from the developers. This would have been very hard without it. I then do some color correction, shading, add some details, and glow where necessary. Then I add some of these sci-fi elements and close-ups or details about the creature. For the longnose fish, I did a separate render of it for the side piece and drew in a skeleton to give it some more interesting parts. And that's basically it. But you skipped the Gamer Subs part, didn't you? Well, at least check out the link in the description, and if you buy something, we get money for the mod. Small creatures like fish usually take around 2 weeks to implement, while medium or large creatures can take 1 or even multiple months to finish. That's one of the reasons why making a large mod like this takes so long. Another, of course, is the Hydra submarine, which is a lot more complicated, and adding new terrain, which no one has ever done before, and messing with base pieces, which was just a horrible idea in retrospect, but it's too late now. We're in too deep and we're gonna add a new base piece. Now, here's your chance to get one of your own ideas into the mod. If you have an idea for modules to put into the dynamic building slot in the back room of the Hydra, let me know in the comments, and if we like your idea, we might just add it. To give you an idea of what we're looking for, here are some examples of modules we're already planning. First, a map module, which is basically a mini scanner room with extended functionality. It features a map table in the middle where you can see your surrounding area that you can zoom in and out of. We're also working on a storage module, which just adds even more lockers and tool racks and armor stands to this back room. And as a third example, the warp drive that allows your Hydra to teleport a short distance, like you saw in the trailer, is also one of these modules. I'm excited to hear your ideas. You can let me know in the comments or on my Discord server, the link is in the description. And if you're excited for the mod, check out the Patreon and the Gamer Subs link in the description and subscribe for more devlogs. For now, thank you very much for watching and all of your support, and as always, I'll see you next time. Goodbye!